In today's video, we have a variety of NHL signings, some injury updates, and a pretty big NHL trade rumor involving Patrik Laine of the Winnipeg Jets. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today, including some breaking news on some signings that have taken place between last night and today. Let's get started first of all with San Jose Sharks re-signing veteran forward Joe Thornton to a one-year contract worth $2 million. Now, this one-year contract does not have any type of bonuses built in. It's just straight salary, 1 year, $2 million. So, of course, the veteran leader of the Sharks returns for one more year. Of course, it's been speculated all summer. And as I mentioned the other day, I figured as we approach the last few days here, before training camp opens, more likely he would sign a contract with the Sharks in return for another season. Of course, we also found out a few days ago that Patrick Marleau would definitely not be returning to San Jose. There'd be no reunion of him and the Sharks for the coming season. But veteran Joe Thornton has signed and will return for another year. And of course, we also had a couple other signings, including another unrestricted free agent. The Edmonton Oilers signed unrestricted free agent center Riley Sheahan to a one-year contract worth $900,000. Of course, this also does not come as a huge surprise either. The Oilers had been linked to him earlier this offseason. It wasn't quite clear if they were looking to sign him or possibly facilitate a trade to make another acquisition. There was a lot of talk that they were involved in the Derek Brassard sweepstakes as well, and they came close to signing him, but ultimately he went to the New York Islanders instead, which obviously opened the door for them to sign Sheahan. Obviously, it's a pretty much of a bargain contract, but there's a lot of familiarity there between GM Ken Holland and the player. Of course, Holland and Sheahan both from Detroit. Obviously, Ken Holland was involved in his drafting and was there for the first 5 or 6 years of his career. So a lot of familiarity there, which is good. Sheahan, we're not going to give you a ton of offense, but he can certainly play the role of a bottom six center. His faceoff statistics are really solid. He can play on the PK and certainly give you some minutes down there, on a defensive side of the puck. Obviously, when you have guys like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, they're going to eat up a lot of the top 6 minutes at the center ice position. Not quite clear yet if we know how the Oilers are going to structure things this year, especially with the new head coach in place. If they're going to play Connor and Leon together on the top line, or will Draisaitl move to center on line 2, which could force Nugent-Hopkins to play on the wing. Not quite sure how they're going to do things, but either way, those 3 players are going to eat up a lot of those top 6 minutes. So Sheahan at best will be a number 3 center, possibly even a number 4. It was also revealed as well that the Edmonton Oilers are likely going to be without veteran center iceman Kyle Brodziak possibly for the whole season. He's been having some issues with his back, and it is quite a possibility that I guess he might end up on long-term injury reserve by the time the season starts, and very well might end up there for the entire season as well. So that'll give them just a little bit extra cap flexibility, and which is another reason why they wanted to sign somebody like Sheahan, who's a veteran who could play that type of role in the bottom 6. So overall, a pretty low risk, pretty decent signing there by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Vegas Golden Knights have also come to terms with restricted free agent defenseman Jimmy Schultz, who they signed as a college free agent last year. He's only played 1 NHL game so far, but they did agree to a 1-year, one-way contract at $850K. It seems kind of crazy that something so small, like such a small signing, would take so long, but listening to the agent for Schultz, it certainly sounds like it was quite a long, drawn-out process. I think the big sticking point here was the fact that it was a one-way deal, but if you take a look at the depth chart for the Vegas Golden Knights right now, basically they have 6 NHL experienced defensemen under contract right now. Then they have guys like Schultz, and they have other young defensemen like Whitecloud and Haig, who very well could get NHL time this year as well. So ultimately, he will have a bigger salary should he end up going through the minors to play in the American Hockey League affiliate. But I guess we will see how much NHL action he sees this year. But I could see him likely being maybe a number 7 guy for them, maybe not playing all the time. But they have some other guys like Merrill and Holden who really are not the most consistent at times, and the younger players like him very well might be able to jump up into the lineup and snag some more NHL time this season. Now, some quick NHL injury updates for you as well. St. Louis Blues forward Vladimir Tarasenko is going to be fine to start the season. There was some concern over a shoulder injury he suffered during the Stanley Cup Finals. During Game 2, his shoulder did pop out of place. It was put back in, and he didn't miss any time, but obviously he was playing through a fair bit of pain to finish out the Stanley Cup win in the finals there versus the Boston Bruins. So, of course, he's been able to heal up and rehab that shoulder over the summer. Didn't require any surgery or anything, but any Blues fans out there who had any concerns over the injury to Tarasenko, or maybe you weren't even aware of the injury, I'm not sure, but either way, he is good to go, and will be starting the training camp in the season on time. Right now is 100% healthy, which is great news. On the Colorado Avalanche front, a couple of their defensemen have been banged up. Erik Johnson was dealing with a lot of injuries last year. He should be ready to go for the season start. And even Ian Cole, who was expected to be out with a hip injury until probably around Christmas time, has already started skating. So that's a promising sign. It still seems unlikely he'll be ready to start the year. I don't think he's going to be that far ahead of schedule. But either way, he should be in the lineup sooner than most people expected, considering, like I said, they were expecting him out to be either around Christmas time or early into the new year in January, depending on how everything went. So some good news there in the injury front for the Avalanche. 2019 NHL draft prospect Peyton Krebs, taken by the Vegas Golden Knights, of course, as we know, was injured. It was part of the reason why his draft stock ended up dropping down, battling an Achilles tendon injury. He is going to remain in Vegas with the Golden Knights. He likely won't be able to do a whole lot during training camp. He's still recovering from that injury. However, he's not going to go back to train and start with the junior team. He's going to remain in Vegas with them. And once he's 100% healed up and ready to play, then they will assign him back to junior. Now, there was a recent interview as well with Boston Bruins defenseman Torey Krug talking about the possibility of a contract extension. Of course, the Boston Bruins do have a little bit of a tight salary cap situation they're dealing with. And heading into the current season right now, they have a lot of question marks, we'll say, on the blue line. But Torey Krug still has one more year left on his deal, and it was a vitally important part of that decor, especially during last year's Stanley Cup Finals run, where they came very close to winning another Stanley Cup. So Krug's proved to be very important. There's a lot of speculation they might not be able to afford to keep him beyond the coming year because of their salary cap situation, unless they were to make some other drastic moves within their lineup and maybe move out a more significant contract. But during this interview, it was revealed with Torey Krug that at this point they haven't had any contract extension talks, but he did indicate as well that he really loves playing in Boston, and as many of the other Bruins players have done, he would be open to the idea of maybe taking a little bit less money to sign a longer term deal to remain in Boston. So there's certainly some positive notes there for Krug remaining to be a Boston Bruin. Of course, now with their salary cap situation, there is some talk out there that they might get some long-term injury reserve relief to start the year to give them some more flexibility. And of course, like I said, we know that McAvoy and Carlo, at least as of today, are not signed. There is a possibility that some other defensemen like John Moore and Kevin Miller may not be ready to start the year as well. So they might end up on the IR to get some relief that way. And there's also the possibility, I don't see how much truth there is to this, but there is talk that David Backes might end up on long-term injury reserve, that he might be suffering from some post-concussion type symptoms or something. Obviously, we know he's had a history of concussions over the years, but at the same time, he was spotted during what they call the captain skate with the leaders of the Boston Bruins here as they get ready for training camp. So not really quite clear. I wouldn't think he'd be out there skating if he was suffering from that, but there is talk around the internet that Backes very well could have some trouble passing his physical and might end up on long-term injury reserve. So I guess we will see. That would be a huge advantage for the Bruins because Backes has not been a regular in the lineup throughout last year's playoffs. He's been a big disappointment with that contract, making $6 million per year. So if he wasn't able to play and they were able to get the long-term injury reserve relief, that would give them a lot more flexibility. So I guess we'll see once training camp opens. We'll get a further update on Backes, but that is the word going around the internet, and we'll see how much truth there is to that. Now, the latest big NHL trade rumor going around the web as well is Patrik Laine, the Winnipeg Jets. They're seriously entertaining trade offers and holding some pretty serious trade talks. The rumor that's going around is that there's 3 Eastern Conference teams that are very serious about acquiring Laine, and that they're having some, pretty in-depth talks with the Jets about the possibility of making this trade. Now, originally, this information started making rounds through the internet and through Twitter yesterday. I was a little hesitant just because of the source where the information came from, but after taking some time to really check into the source, they do seem to have a lot of other information on past rumors, things that have come true. So I guess we'll kind of, semi-trust this source for right now to say that this is something legitimately being discussed. Now, it's been noted before by other legitimate NHL insiders like Elliot Friedman and others that we've discussed before that it is believed that Patrik Laine was kind of on the outs with Jets leadership of players like Scheifele and Wheeler, that they just weren't happy with his work ethic and how he carries himself and everything, and that maybe there was a bit of a falling out there and he could be moved. So this kind of trade rumor does kind of fall in line with that as well. Now, of course, there was no mention of who the teams were in the 3 Eastern Conference teams, but I can only imagine what type of package of players or picks it would take to land this type of guy out of Winnipeg. Clearly, they have a salary cap issue with the Jets there, so I would imagine mentioned that a lot of the return would have to be more of a future package, so a lot of prospects and draft picks and that type of thing. But they're not going to take a trade like this lightly. I mean, even though Patrik Laine had a down year last year, he's still a proven 30 to 40 goal scorer throughout his rookie contract, and obviously, he's still quite young and maturing as well. So I think they should really tread lightly here. It's difficult to win these types of trades when you trade this type of player, but I know there's been a lot of talk over the offseason that Montreal was interested, maybe an offer sheet of Laine, maybe a trade. So we'll see if there's any truth to that, but they very well could be one of these teams. They have built themselves up quite a big, deep prospect pool that we've discussed here on the channel before, so they do have a lot of assets that they could possibly use to try to work a deal for Laine. Now, I've seen other talk around the internet that they were willing to include Max Domi, but I honestly don't see that happening. Max Domi proved to be one of their top playmakers last year, so that's the kind of player that Laine would need to play with. You're not going to want to move one of your top playmakers to when you're acquiring a top goal scorer like Laine. I mean, clearly the guy can score, and if he's playing with the right playmaker who can feed him the puck all the time, that's just going to bode well for both players. So I don't see Domi being included in any kind of package like that, even though there has been some talk around the internet about Domi. I wouldn't really put much stock into that myself. But who could the other teams be? It's hard to say. I could see Carolina having interest. There's been talk about them in the past as well. Maybe the New York Islanders, I guess, to an extent, have been linked to Laine, but not really sure that makes the most sense for the Islanders. But again, they do also have a pretty good prospect pool of players that the Jets might find attractive in a package for Laine. But it's hard to say exactly who these teams would be because there really wasn't any further mention. The one team, like I said, that's been consistently brought up through various rumor sources around the entire offseason has been Montreal. I would not be shocked to find out they had legitimate interest, and there have been some legitimate talks. But exactly how far it's gone, it's difficult to say. But I guess we're not too far away from training camp. We're quite a few days now into September. Many of these RFAs remain unsigned, and I do think teams like Winnipeg and others are going to have to at least consider looking at making some trades here to get some of these guys under contract and get these situations resolved so they can move forward with their teams. Maybe we'll see some of these RFAs maybe even being traded for each other, depending on what all the asking prices are around the league. Wouldn't be a complete shock either, but we're bound to get some movement here soon, I would think. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of players, missing training camp, possibly missing the start of the year. And that's, like I said, it's not good for the player, it's not good for the teams, and it's certainly not good for business for the NHL. So hopefully we get some resolution on many of these situations around the league here soon enough. But let me know what you think about the Laine trade rumor. Do you think the Winnipeg Jets would actually pull the trigger? And which Eastern Conference teams to you would make the most sense that would be having these serious talks with Winnipeg to acquire the Finnish sniper? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Give this video a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.